Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, the stock market, the metals market, any market where we can try to get an edge and figure out how to make some or ideally a lot of money on the internet. Load up discussion today. We've got Bitcoin is not down 3%. That is yesterday's headline. The headline that we will be talking about today is that stocks are steady, gold is steady, crypto is steady, and the US claims to add 130K jobs in January. So we'll be talking about that and the extent to which we believe it. BlackRock announced Uniswap token purchase as part of the plan to bring its BUIDL token to DeFi. And very interestingly, Lighter Perpdex is the first to author the Korean equity perps. Looking forward to discuss if we're going to start longing and shorting Korean stocks, if that's the stage of the cycle that we are in. So those are going to be the headlines we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk general market thoughts as usual, and delighted to say we're going to have Namik, one of the co-founders of MegaETH, on the show later today for a conversation. Really looking forward to have that conversation today. Mega obviously just went live a few days ago, and we want to talk. We want to talk about how that is going so far and what the team's plans and expectations are moving forward. So stay tuned for that. I've got Legendary in the co-host seat with me today. In the meantime, for the usual show, we are going to discuss all the normal things. But before we get there, just a reminder that nothing that we say here is financial advice. The market is very, very risky. We don't know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Thursday. It is the 12th of February. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm doing quite well, mostly because the market is flat, which means I don't need to worry about the market and I can worry about other things which are more fun and interesting to worry about. So I am having a good day as a result of that market flatness. Although, when I now look at my screen where I already can see CoinMarketCap, which we'll have up in a bit, it is still at 8. We're still at this extreme fear level, which we've been holding on for quite a while. We did go as low as 4. And just as a reminder, FTX crash, I think, sent it to quote unquote only 11. So it is quite wild how strongly the intense fear is holding up at the moment.
Yeah, I told you I'm less interested in fear because I feel like fear is a good one to buy a dip, whereas we're clearly in a much tougher market than just to buy the dip and hope for a V reversal. I think I'm more interested in apathy. I want an apathy and greed index. I think if we stick, maybe the way to read this is if you're in fear under sub 10 for multiple days, multiple weeks, that must translate to apathy. I'm less interested in fear, more interested in apathy. What do you think about that take, Ledge?
Yeah, I like it. Kind of goes well in line with this post or with this take that we had on the show where, what was it, Bernstein's analyst or one of their analysts was saying that the bear case for Bitcoin is the weakest it has ever been. It's just that people are interested in other things right now, and that whole AI revolution is more interesting than assigning the role of digital coin gold to Bitcoin and hence buying it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That is fair as well. Okay, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Maybe final question, Ledge, before we get into the main stuff. You said that kind of enjoying the flatness. What are some of the ways that you are enjoying the flat time? I'm assuming that you're not thinking to buy this specific dip, or are you? What are you looking for? I said what I'm looking for. What are you looking for potential buying opportunities, or are you just doing other stuff for the moment?
I mean, I am doing other stuff, and let me think when I would start buying things. Probably when I see, because I'm so much in the agentic space right now, and I'm kind of tracking what Coinbase is doing with their agentic wallets and what a couple protocols on Base are doing. When I start to see something emerging there that I found more interesting than just, okay, we have agentic wallets, we have X402 as a payment standard for agents. I think someone built a Fiverr-like platform for agents where agents can get paid. So I feel like it's a lot of experimenting and infrastructure building, which is cool, but nothing out there is like standing out to me that would be, say, the equivalent of OpenClaw, but a financial infrastructure, a financial framework where I'm like, ooh, this is something I would want to be invested in. So I guess it's a bit of a wait and see game for something more specific. And apart from that, I mean, at the end of the day, I still keep buying a very healthy monthly exposure to the MSCI All Country World. I have my Bitcoin buy still going through. I'm still in the process of figuring out how I want to go about adding more gold on a regular basis, because I told you it wouldn't be the healthy proportion for me to just buy an ounce of gold every month, given how I want to have my portfolio allocated. Because if I want to have like 10% in in gold and the rest say S&P 500 in crypto, that would also mean that if gold's at 5k, I would need to add like 50k worth of S&P 500 exposure a month, so like 600k a year, which is not something I am uh, able to do financially speaking at the moment, or not something I want to do at the moment. So I'm still thinking through that process, but I don't have a specific bottom signal in mind that would make me interested. I'm trying to look more for, is something happening that's so interesting that I think this will emerge as a trend and will get many people on, or will be a new sub meta that I will try to ride again instead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a bunch of interesting ideas there. My key thought is that the best way to participate in the market, if you're not a brilliant day trader, and I think it's very, very difficult to be a brilliant day trader, you just got to identify the waves, and it's not obvious what the next wave is. Of course, there's a lot of institutional adoption. There's a lot of uptake in equity perps, right? I think that's where the activity goes, and it typically is quite wise to follow the activity. So I think that is where I would go if you have to participate. There's nothing to bid there as such. Of course, you can bid hype, and that did move up 50%. So that was a trade. I participated in some of it from maybe 26 to 32. But even that settled down as well now. That's settled. It had its 50% move, which is pretty healthy in this type of market as the rest of the market is getting dragged aggressively. So can it be hype again? We already rode hype from like $13 to 60. Is that the way crypto works? Is it just going to be the same best thing for another wave, or is there going to be something else emergent? That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking for the next wave to ride, and at the moment, to be honest, it just feels like equity perps is that thing, but there's nothing to bid apart from hype, and maybe that just means you got to bid hype at a good price, and you just wait. And that's purely from the crypto perspective. Obviously, we've spoken about energy, we've spoken about gold, we've spoken about these other things where I think it's probably wise now to be slightly more diversified than the all-in crypto in 2021, when crypto was the next best thing. It represented outperformance. It was everything that, you know, you wanted to be risk on, you just had to go all in crypto in 2021. I don't think that is the case now. So now it's definitely about being slightly more diversified, I think. And being a bit more selective like that. Ledge, final take there. Do you agree with that take about being slightly more diversified even now? And this is including even if you had a smaller portfolio. Do you think that makes sense? Like going all in on crypto, it's not the same as 2021, right? That's my opinion.
It's not even the same as 2025 or 2024 for that matter, because the last year would have upheld the argument that if you have a small portfolio and your goal is to 10x that, you can't afford to be diversified and you need to take more risks. But right now, I wouldn't even see this opportunity to take 10k and try to turn it into 100 quickly in crypto. Probably still could make it on some random meme coin trade, but I think that the risk reward is way, way off at the moment. So yes, you need to be more diversified. And I think on the upside, on the positive side, I think it's easier for a smaller portfolio now to try to make some to try to increase that portfolio, but not by trading, but rather by participating in this agentic engineering slash vibe coding, depending on how sophisticated you wanna word that. It's been a very, very healthy amount of people making a good amount of money on that. And you don't need to have necessarily a technical background. But I think and all of that I think is realistically doable with 2 to 3 $20 subscriptions. Obviously, it's more comfy if you can afford to have the larger ones, but especially Codex $20 a month, so ChatGPT that is, and Gemini $20 a month with being able to also use anti-gravity carries you a very long way. So you'd probably be able to monetize something by doing that, and would have more shots at goal, and it doesn't cost anything but like time and energy and effort. You're not burning through your stack, and you would have a higher chance at like making some sort of meaningful return, connection, network, actual financial return as a result of that than right now, I would say, trading the market.
But what is the financial return though? Are people expected to build something and monetize it? Like it's pretty hard to build a product, go to market and do
People are
something.
lazy though. Like OpenClaw, everyone can set up OpenClaw. There's millions of people writing guides on setting up OpenClaw. And the right way to do it is talk to your agent, tell your codex, your opus, set up OpenClaw. This is my setup. Ask me questions when you need. And this thing is going
Then
to ask.
how do you make money on that?
Well, people are lazy on doing that. Someone built the wrapper.
Oh, so you sell the guide to how to do it. That's your point.
Yeah, no, they made a technical wrapper. It's like, here's a $10 subscription. Here's a $10, and we're just gonna set it up for you on a sophisticated prompt. The other person who I'd like to quote is, he built a tool connecting context across different agents, and Google reached out to him, was like, yo, do you want a job? We want to talk with you. Other people are like vibe coding companies and selling them off. So I think there's many ways on how you can make money. I mean, Alex Finn is now trying to cook up AGI in 3 of his Mac studios or whatever, which is not really a feasible thing to try to achieve, but it's generating a ton of traffic and impressions of that, and that is also probably paying quite well on his X creative use, and obviously he has a starting advantage because he's a large creator. But I think there is ways to come up with stuff that is monetizable. Then you have the whole layer of hackathons where you could also participate in. I do think there's quite a few more ways to try to make.
Sure. I guess the thing is, this is for the traditional crypto audience that we have, although I guess we have a lot of entrepreneurial people too. So I guess it is relevant. There's no, apart from these like AI slop coins that people are trying to trade, which are very, very risky, that, it's kind of different, right? You're using your entrepreneurial side of your brain, thinking here's an opportunity. Let me provide a good or service to people in this arena that's super hot. That is the way to make money, which I agree with. I guess maybe that's less an investable way. So you're saying the best investment in a way is to just kind of invest in yourself for a period of time and try to figure out how you can then teach someone, produce a good or service off the back of that, which might be interesting. I definitely don't disagree with that. I think there's value in it, and then you've got to figure out how to monetize it on the back of it. But in the meantime, we still have a bunch of tokens to talk about. We've got price action to talk about. We've got important stuff going on in the world to talk about, and we're gonna have Namik from MegaETH on the show a little bit later today. So excited to have that discussion, to discuss what their plans are, what their assessment is of mainnet so far, and what their plans are moving forward. So let's get into the show though, starting with the price action. As always, we have Bitcoin is up 1% to 67K. Doesn't look great there, to be honest. Down 4% on the week. ETH is up 1% to $1,900, just under 2K. XRP is up 1% to $1.40. BNB is up 4% to $620. Sol is flat around $81. And Hyperliquid is up 9%, although that's just back to 31. It did dip beneath 30 for a little bit. Getting into the meme coin side of things, got Doge up 4%, Pepe's up 5%, Bonk is up 6%. Pippin, again, keep talking about Pippin. We still will not do the research on it. We do not know what is going on. Everyone in the Telegram telling us the secret source for Pippin is a little bit of crime, but that is not an allegation we're making. We do not know because we don't know what's going on. It's just up 200% on the week. So maybe holding that would have been nice. Pengu's up 8% as well. SPX is up 3%. And okay, so these tokens are around up a few percent. That's what we're gleaning there. In terms of the headlines that we're going to talk about, we're going to talk crypto stocks and gold steady as US claims to add 130K jobs in January. Legendary will break that down for a moment. BlackRock announced Uniswap token purchase as part of a plan to bring its BUIDL token to DeFi. So just explain what's going on there and maybe some of the price action. And interestingly, Lighter Perp Dex, biggest competitor to Hyperliquid, is the first to offer Korean equity perps on companies like Samsung and Hyundai. Really, really interesting. I don't know if we're going to start trading them, given that we know so little about them. But I have seen a bunch of people on Twitter talking about it at the moment. So maybe that is the wave that we're talking about, the Korean stock market. Let's talk about it today. Some notable price action. OL1 surged. A couple of short squeezes out there. Chain was up more than 50% today. Move was up more than 30% as well. And then I think they started to turn down. Aztec is down 25% on launch to 212 mil FDV, and Asta is actually up 9% as well. So some move up on the perp dexes. Some other news: Michael Saylor in an interview says if Bitcoin goes to 8K, he can just refinance strategy debt. Some people really didn't like that clip because the interviewer was asking from who's gonna refinance it with if it goes that low, and he doesn't give a great answer. He's just like, oh look, I think it's gonna happen. We'll be fine. Typically, I think that's bottom style behavior where, just kind of dunking on. There's a bit of grave dancing going on Sailor and Bitcoin in general at the moment, which I think hopefully is closer to the lows than to the highs, is my suspicion. Sui launches Athena produced stablecoin on Sui. Athena really doing a good job doing their stablecoin as a service. Coinbase announces AI tool to provide AI agents with wallets. Stripe is going to provide USDC agent payments on Base. The Binance Fund has completed its buying of $1 billion of Bitcoin. Maybe they might have to top up if we keep going lower, but that is interesting to see. GTE announces partnership with Layer Zero to build its treasury layer of Turbo on Zero. Espresso announces holder score to determine airdrop allocation. And finally, on the X side of things, X Money will launch in beta in 1 or 2 months and then worldwide to all X users thereafter. Very intrigued by how X, formerly Twitter, plans on getting in the money game, getting money moving between people on its platform. That could be pretty interesting. So that is the roundup, your modern market roundup for the day. Legendary, before we get into the main headlines, is there anything catching your attention here that you're finding interesting?
You'll probably not be surprised that the thing that I'm picking out is coming from Coinbase, from the dev platform, and it is the agentic wallet stuff, because I think, as I mentioned, this is pretty interesting. So what is the thinking here? Maybe to step back a bit. Obviously, we have this hypothesis in crypto that if agents are to transact and play money games of whatever sort, they would do that more natively on the blockchain, because that is more programmatic. You can set up more rules than just giving them a credit card, where probably the only thing you can do is to set them a spending limit. You could start to block individual merchants as well. If you do not want your agent to, I don't know, buy stuff on Amazon or sign up on OnlyFans or whatever. But the limits are rather strict. And obviously with on-chain stuff, you can be way more programmatic and can be more sophisticated with what you want your agent to do with the money that you're giving to them. And another good thing of this is that this can be extended. Like, people can build other skills, other protocol integrations, MCP servers around that to make the capabilities more powerful. The cool thing that Coinbase did, it's unsurprisingly running on Base, and the transactions are gasless. That means even if you give your agent only, like, I don't know, 1,000 USDC to do whatever you want them to do, they can't run out of steam because there's not enough ETH on that. So that makes it even nicer for a non-crypto community, people playing around with agents, learning about on-chain stuff, and then not having to think about, oh, I need ETH as well, but maybe having an easy way. Here's an agentic wallet. I top it up with my credit card, top up $500 like with top up Anthropic API credits or whatever, and then it just can go and do its thing. And also the other stuff with that is that you're not managing the private key yourself. You are trusting Coinbase to do that, which I think is the right way, because prompt injection is such a real risk, and it's so easy to trick these agents, especially if you allow them to talk to others, to share data that they're not supposed to share, which I have tried. I tried attacking my agent and see how easily I could get Nimbus to share stuff from her memories, and it's very easy to do that. And obviously, one thing is maybe compromising personal data, but the other thing is compromising credit card data, or in this case, payment data, private keys. So I like the approach that Coinbase took with this, and I like that they are thinking about how to make this interesting for people who are coming from the vibe coding, agentic engineering side, are learning about on-chain and want to use a wallet because they think it's a cool way to give financial capabilities to their agents.
I want to take this in two directions. One, I'm going to respond to you directly. Then second, I'm going to move it into like the money-making realm. The first thing I was going to say is I saw this really interesting tweet suggesting, trying to zoom out a little bit and thinking about crypto and thinking about AI, suggesting that us humans are the reason why crypto is so painful is because it's not for humans. You got to think about this a little bit in an abstract way. Crypto is not for humans. Like, you know, you've got the MetaMask wallet or the Rabi wallet in the browser, and it's always been a bit cumbersome. You've got these private keys and you've got these other things, and it's never been easy. It's never been an easy UX for people to use, right? And the thinking is something like humans are the beta testers of crypto. Like, yeah, we were early to it. We created it. But the ultimate use case will be for agents because humans, you know, it's a bit cumbersome. But for agents can't access the, you know, the traditional payment rails. It can't be given the power or authority to spend it on your behalf, or at least not in an obvious way. It can't take money out of your account and do various things with it. There's so many barriers for that. So that it was a really interesting idea that I heard. And I do think that if there's going to be a big success story coming out of this lull, it should be agent related. Now that all the Claude stuff is happening and you can empower your agents to do a bunch of stuff, I think all of your safety concerns are really, really legitimate, like super legitimate, especially if it's going to have payment powers. But I think there should be something going on there, like value creation in that arena of creating agents that are protected and safe and that you can trust with a wallet. I doubt you want to vibe code that yourself, right? You probably do not want to vibe code yourself. You want something audited and managed and, well, maybe not managed, but as in you want some code that you can trust. So I do think that's a huge opportunity, but maybe on a more personal level, I just want to shout out a couple of questions here, not questions, but a few points. Toneworld in the comments said, I've heard zero broke to made it stories on AI coded apps yet. Need to get around better people, I guess. This is just a reference to our previous conversation on, you know, okay, well, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do with all this information that, okay, agents are coming on chain and they're going to have their own wallets and, okay, cool. Maybe there's some things you can do. I do think the examples that you gave, Les, they might be legit, but it's a very, very small proportion of people who are making it. As you say, there's a lot of content creators around it who may be farming X payouts and all of this stuff. But I think it's hard. Like not everyone's a content creator. So I think it's hard. And one of our friends in Telegram is also saying, glad you asked about how it makes money, because I think it's harder than, you know, it's harder than what is obvious. And maybe a final take here before I come back to you, just to get your thoughts on these various thoughts. The idea of what's next to ride is what got us here. However, people hyper rotating so much we can't even have one outperforming asset for a month before we immediately look for the next. I think that's a great take and is emblematic of where we are in not just this cycle, but it's like the multiple cycles. When you put them all together, you get to this point now where, because of the price action, because of the tokenomics on some of the bigger tokens, because of the way meme coins have even worked out as a response to the low float high FDV tokens, and that hasn't worked out either. People are not willing to believe in tokens in the same way, really raising the question of, okay, how can there be a next wave when the spirit of the potential holders is so broken? Would love your thought on that specifically, Ledge, or maybe any of the other things I mentioned too.
Yeah, so many interesting points. Maybe in terms of let me start on these like 0 to 100 stories. I think there is a few of them, probably also in meme coins. 99% didn't make a mil plus trading with meme coins. And I think it's a similar pattern here, but it's also like, it doesn't need to be 0 to 100. Like the guy who I mentioned doing the wrapper for OpenClaw, I think made 70K with that. If you want to look at the top story of making money, then it would be Shlomo, who did Base 44, which was vibe coded app vibe coded app to create apps and create websites. And obviously he's not a rookie. He is experienced before, founded companies before, but he completely vibe coded that with a small team of, I don't know, a couple, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, something around that, and sold it to Wix, the website hosting service, for 80 mil. And that was way before we had Claude 4.6 and Codex. So there is a few success stories, but I don't think that every success story needs to be like 0 to 7 or 8 figures. There's also smaller ones that work out well. B, you are on mute, by the way, if you wanted to come in.
Just saying true. Carry on.
Gotcha. So that is on that side. And remind me again of the other aspect of the question that you had for me.
Well, it was more just this idea that we know that riding the wave is the best thing, but now maybe the question is, do people even have it in them to believe in anything and long enough to ride a wave? Like hype has clearly been the most recent wave. People genuinely do believe in hype. It still has a lot of belief in it. Maybe borders on that position where they're so maxi now that they can never get out of it, which is the same position that the Sol people are in, which is the same position that the ETH people are in, which is the same position that the Bitcoin people are in. So you kind of assume that there'll be another thing, but it has to emerge, and I certainly don't see it. But I guess Tone World's point is, even if it did, people don't care about it enough, which I'm just curious for your thought on that.
Yeah, probably agree with that, because like attention span is getting even shorter with all of the vibe coded stuff and the agentic like revolution. I'm saying this because I saw G Money posting something that I did. Like whenever G Money is seeing an interesting article or guide, he's not even reading that anymore. He's like throwing it to his agent. He's like, yo, see if there's anything valuable in there for you and make sense of it. I'm doing the same. If there's a GitHub I find interesting, I'm not reading that. Like, agent, figure it out. Is there something interesting in there for you? And if yes, tell me what you want to do with it. So that makes attention span even shorter, because you don't even need to digest the content that you want to use for yourself. That makes it then probably harder to believe in. And then the bets that you want to believe in, the long-term ones, they seem either unrealistic or they are too long-term for most people. Like say Elon said, Moon City in 10 years. Probably know that this is not a realistic timeline, because he also said like first mission to Mars in 2023 or 2025. That should have happened. So obviously he's using these very marketable numbers, but I think it's pretty clear that at some point we'll have some sort of like permanent residency on the moon, and at some point there will be a mission to Mars. At some point, the energy need for all of these AI companies and infrastructures, if we've seen that capex this year from US companies alone is 600 billion to build the infrastructure, will require new forms of energy or stronger nuclear use, or you can believe that will pump the uranium price or whatever. So I feel like there are things to believe in, even in reasonable timeframes, but because they seem so abstract for most people in terms of what is actually happening, and so like far removed from what your daily experience, your daily life is, it's hard to believe in. Like you can believe, or it was maybe easier to believe in Bitcoin at some point and seeing people buying that and getting an ETF and understanding, oh, there's an ETF, now more people can buy that more easily. It's probably easier to believe in than the whole space exploration stuff or the whole agentic stuff. And Dario from Anthropic put it really well, who said that he thinks from the second half of this year, there will be a difference, a massive difference between the top users of AI and people who don't use that, to an extent that it will feel like a top AI user, like say top 1%, whatever I'm making now up a number, lives in a completely different world than someone who's not doing that. And if you're not living in that world, you'll probably find it hard to believe in it and then have a strong thesis to invest in it. I see it in my own circle of friends, and I'm not the only one. Talked to a couple AI heavy friends as well, who are saying that from the outside perspective, if you're not in this AI world, they are thinking about it as like sort of conspiracy theory with these agents. They're not real people, not real entities, and they think something that I've fallen victim to some sort of AI conspiracy. So I think the further you remove from that, the harder it then also is to have a strong belief and thesis in investing in that or in these industries.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. We're going to be talking about this a lot, right? So let's keep it moving forward today. Obviously, looking forward to having Namik on the show in just a little bit from MegaETH to discuss how their mainnet is going so far. But we've got a few headlines to get through before that. So let's take us through the main assets as usual. Then I'll talk BlackRock. Then we want to talk Korean equity perps briefly as well. So let's get into it today. What do we need to know from around the market?
First and foremost, the US economy is looking good in terms of the job market. In January, expectations were far outstripped as 130,000 jobs were added. That was way higher than Wall Street's expectations. That is, we had the figures on that coming out yesterday. The expectation was 68,000 jobs to be added, so it's almost double that. Unemployment rate as a result of that also dropped to 4.3% from 4.4%. So that is an unexpectedly positive start to the year. US labor market is improving on that. And as you said, as part of the headline, that also led to the gold price being pretty stable, being flat on the day, still holding above $5,000. I'm just realizing that I'm not sharing the gold price. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Silver's down a bit though, but also still at $83. The S&P 500, maybe take a look here, is bang on flat on the day. If we look at the map, there's a bit of green, there's a bit of red. I think more notable is that yesterday we've spoken about the semiconductor sector being weak, losing a couple percent. Today we're seeing a reversal of that, with Nvidia being up 1%, and more notably Micron Technology being up 10% over the last day. So that is a positive sign from that side of things. But despite the semiconductor sector recovering, crypto did not really recover. As you said, we are flat on the day, which is good. We are not down, but we are also not benefiting from the, yet again, more positive sentiment when it comes to the tech and semiconductor sector. And finally, the last piece of news, because I mentioned it yesterday. Yesterday, I said we had 3 consecutive days in a row of positive Bitcoin ETF inflows. We did not manage to have a 4th day of inflows again, because yesterday we did see outflows to the tune of $276 million.
Okay, good stuff. To be honest, this is the kind of apathy that I am looking for. I don't think there's a huge amount to talk about. Sometimes when you run a show every single day, you have to manufacture and create things to talk about, create stories and narratives. Why is the price doing this? Why is it doing that? I think we're slightly beyond that now. We've spoken to death about some of the thoughts around Bitcoin, some of the thoughts around stocks. So we've been speaking about it this week, right? So I like a bit of a steady day. I don't think you need to read into every single day too much. I do think the jobs, I think there's a little bit of skepticism around the jobs report. And maybe the other thing I'd tie into it, and we only touch on political stuff to the extent that we think it affects markets. I don't know if you saw the Pam Bondi clip yesterday, Legendary, where she was being questioned by, I think it was Congress or some group of people, some group of official people. She's obviously the attorney general in the States. And the stuff she was coming out was absolutely horrendous, like being quizzed on the Epstein files and maybe why I don't know what the exact question was. Maybe it was why certain things were redacted or not redacted. Just asking questions around the files. And it transpired that one of her responses was, why are we even asking questions about this? We should be talking about how the stock market's up or something. Like, that's the thing we should be focusing on. Just like that's not her exact words. It is kind of a paraphrase, but the response to the questions around sex offenders and Epstein was, don't worry about that. Like, why are we even bothering with this? Because the stock market, I think it's just such a horrible, horrible way to respond. And I don't know, the way that she was quoting the market, it makes you feel like I don't know, I don't believe in these things specifically, but it would be a wonderful way to top the market as someone screams out the numbers of the market. in opposition to being quizzed about some of what might potentially be the most horrific crimes imaginable. So I don't know. I actually do think the files, and I don't know to what extent people have looked into it. I do think it's going to hurt the American economy. I think it's going to drag on. It's not going to go away as much as people want it to go away. And I think there will be a market effect to it at some point. I don't know exactly when, but that is my thought. Ledge, I don't know if you have a reflection there. We should keep it moving.
Nothing screams more late stage capitalism than that. You put it perfectly. Worse crimes happening, but look, the market's doing well.
It was horrific. Genuinely horrific.
Question back to you: if you think it's going to affect the market, I know we don't have much more time until we have to get in the interview. Do you think we will have to deal with the Epstein files at some point on the show as well? Then,
yeah, I think so. Like, we don't need to go through them line by line, but I think it's going to be market relevant at some point in time. I don't know when, but I think it will be. Let's see. We don't need to go into it today necessarily, but look, we want to talk. Next headline is that BlackRock announced Uniswap token purchase and BUIDL on chain. This is the interesting news that BlackRock is going to be offering DeFi trading for the first time, and it's bought a bunch of Uniswap tokens to participate. Unfortunately, it didn't really go up that much. Like if I'm looking at the price, I'm going to do this headline pretty quickly, but the Uni tokens are only up 4% on the day after that news. I think people are generally pretty excited about it. It's cool that BlackRock are bringing the fund on chain. There's actually a ton of other stuff like that on chain, though. People don't necessarily know, but via Ondo, you can get exposure to normal stocks. You can get exposure to ETFs. You can get exposure to the ETFs you like, Ledge, like the MSCI style world ETFs. You can get the copper ETF on chain. You can get the rare earth minerals on chain. Like you can actually get access to these ETFs on chain already. So it's just a continuous trend of that continuing to happen. So I think it's pretty cool to see. Ledge, do you have a view there, or I just want you to touch on the final headline as well?
No, nothing to add there. Let's keep it moving and get to the final headline. Where is it? There it is. Lighter has, sorry for that, this is the wrong tweet. We want this one first. Is now the first DEX to offer Korean equity perps. Markets are live, 10x leverage for Hyundai, which also then gives you exposure to Boston Dynamics, which I like because they own a very good part of that company, Samsung, and the Korean Composite Index. And also as part of that is interesting. Will Price pointed out, because they're offering 15% funding rebates, it is structurally cheaper to hold open positions on Lighter. And that is the probably one of the most relevant things when it then comes to TVL, because yes, equity perps are super interesting, and we've seen them finding great product market fit with the gold, the silver, and the copper markets. But we also have been saying on the show that if you want to have a long position, a small leveraged long on NVIDIA, whatever, and then you look at funding rates and annualize them, and you see how much you're paying on that, and it's just not a rational thing to do. And it is very healthy, in my opinion, that we're seeing this pricing competition now happening between Lighter, Hyperliquid, other perps to come in, because if you want to be competitive with TradFi, it just needs to be at a reasonable price level to hold these positions. Similarly, how we've seen the competition in DEXs a couple of years ago with DeFi Summer, bringing down the prices of trading, of bridging around, which is very good, which is very net positive for the market. So I think we're going to see the same thing happening with the equity perp side of things. And I quite like that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely cool. What do you think on the Korean stocks just as a thing to get exposure to? I think I just kind of laughed when I saw the headline, because I certainly do not think that is something that people in crypto have traditionally been exposed to. I don't know if many investors have felt this is what's happened. I think people just haven't felt it necessary to look anywhere else other than Mag 7 for the last God knows how many years, right? That's basically what's happened. You've never needed to buy anything other than Tesla, Meta, Amazon, or just be exposed to the S&P. So Do you think this is the right rotation? Do you think there's various rotations coming? Like, what's your specific view just before we get into our conversation with Namik in a moment?
Let me just show you a chart to answer that question. Samsung is up 150% over the last 6 months. Yes, it's good.
Wait, how many months?
6 months, up 220% over the last year and up 150% over the last 6 months. We do want exposure to Korean markets. Interesting tech companies there, interesting robotics companies there. So very, very happy to have that. Yeah.
Okay, well, it doesn't feel great buying it after being up to however many percent in the last 6 months, but
Just a fundamental problem, by the way, with the equity perps, right? Because they will add an asset once it picks up in popularity and it gets interesting. They will add silver after a run or a mid run where it's already up, I don't know, 120%. And then you as the investor have to think, oh, do I think it has it in it to do another 80%? They will not add some underexposed, I don't know,
exactly.
Azerbaijani stock market because now they have 3 AI companies there who could be interesting. Nobody cares about them because it's too early. So the tendency is, because they need the TVL that it works well, that you're always going to be a bit late to something once it comes to the equity perps side of things.
That is a great take, actually. I hadn't thought about that sufficiently. The things that they're bringing are the things that are hot. And unless it's maybe a traditionally hot thing, like obviously you always maybe want equity perps on Tesla, or you always want something like those top names. But if they're newer markets, slightly more exotic, that the reason that they're there is that they're already up and people want them. So that's a really interesting way to frame it. But all right, something to keep in mind. We'll come back to that as we explore our worldwide equity perps exposure moving forward. But in the meantime, guys, I'm delighted to welcome to the show today Namik from MegaETH. Super excited to have this conversation. Namik is the co-founder of MegaETH, the self-described real-time blockchain that just launched its public mainnet 3 days ago on February the 9th. Mega was put on the map with seed round backing from Vitalik, a token sale that pulled in so much more demand than what was available. Only 50 mil was available, pulled in almost 10 times that, oversubscribed, and a stress test that happened recently where I think they did more than 1 billion transactions in a single week. So today we'll talk about how Mainnet is going so far, the thinking behind tying over half the token supply to performance milestones instead of time-based unlocks, which is an interesting dynamic, and where real-time blockchain fits in a world where Vitalik himself is rethinking the L2 roadmap. So great to have you with us today, Namik. Good to see you again. How are things your side?
Doing pretty well, guys. Pleasure to see you two as well. I think we've last met face to face in Copenhagen all those months ago.
It did. It was very fun. It was very fun to meet. It was very fun to meet the guys, get a taste of the Mafia vibe. I bet it feels like a whole world away for you now.
Yeah, it was summer, so we had just released testnet, and 6 months later, here we are.
Here we are, indeed. Right. So we definitely want to get into mainnet. We want to talk about how things are going so far and some of the pretty unique and interesting decisions that you guys have taken. Because I think you have made a point of trying to do things slightly differently. But maybe just to start with a little bit of an overview there and to get a sense of your guys' thinking. You guys have done a lot of things differently in your time at Mega. You've not done big high valuation rounds. You've decided to give community a lot of exposure via different community rounds. And now you've decided to do a TGE based on KPIs instead of time. What do you think explains your team's unorthodoxy in that way and desire or willingness to do things differently? Where's that coming from?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's this famous Einstein quote, right? Like the definition of madness is to do the same thing twice and expect different results.
Mm.
I would say that we are fundamentally approaching most of these things from first principles and seeing what makes sense if we were to kind of redo it without any like precedent based on how people have structured things in the past. So since I joined Mega, there were 3 things that you had mentioned which I was involved in. So one of that was the focus on community as a massive shareholder / stakeholder compared to traditional venture rounds. I think the general reason there's a couple, right? So when I got into crypto last cycle, what I loved about crypto was the fact that price discovery happened in public markets, right? Like everyone had equal chance to put skin in the game. you lose some, you win some, you lose most, but at least your future is in your own hands. I watched that kind of disappear in real time with the rise of like, I mean, what, everyone made a bunch of money. So the VCs raised like a ton of money. And when the VCs have like a ton of money, they just start bidding up and up. And then price discovery happens in private markets. And I think that prevents a wealth generation effect, or at least just like, I wouldn't use that word, but it does not allow people to be accurately rewarded for their convictions and beliefs. So, when we looked at how do we want to look at our cap table formation, I've always been very bearish on the idea of an airdrop. Because like why, especially for like a chain, right? Like it makes sense for a protocol, right? Like Hyperliquid, you had a scenario where people were like spending insane amounts of money on fees to use Hyperliquid, and you found your power users and you rewarded your power users for loving your product. I don't think that's, and that doesn't really work for layer ones because you need the native token as gas. And so far it's never worked for layer twos at a general purpose because how do you like quantify general activity? Doesn't really work. So I wasn't a big fan of airdrops, and I thought that like we should find a way to like make ICOs possible and make them like regulated, obviously, and follow all the laws, but not basically try and like look at this as from a point of view of, hey, how do we like win as much as we can, but how can we enable people to be like massive stakeholders in our success, right? Or failure. Both could happen. And that's kind of even how we approached the public sales. So we capped it at 999 mil val. The logic being, I just didn't think it was right for us to sell a primary sale at a unicorn valuation to like retail investors. I just didn't like how that sounded. And then, yeah, there was a lot of demand. I think 1.4 or so billion in demand, and that gave us an opportunity to try and say, hey, we have $50 million of allocation. Let's find people who we think are most aligned with the success of Mega over the long run. I hope we did a good job, but we'll see over time. Another thing you mentioned is our approach towards KPIs compared to time-based unlocks. I think it's our approach to try and at least solve the low float, high FTV issue, right? So what do I mean by that? When people are purchasing an asset, I don't think they realize what they're buying. They don't understand that like there's a big difference between market cap, circulating supply, and their ownership in the supply of something is actually not what they think it is, because over time that number becomes rapidly inflated because of insiders, right? So our thinking was, hey, we're going to take a low percentage of token supply. So the team is taking 9% of token supply, and we're going to work, and that follows a regular 1-year cliff, 3-year vest. But we're going to work to get more tokens as a team. And we're going to effectively allow stakeholders in the Mega ecosystem to join us in that model. So we have another 50% of the supply, which is backed behind KPIs. These KPIs will be between MegaETH adoption, right? So that means like applications being successful on the chain, USDM supply, right? Stuff like that. It's also going to be around MegaETH performance and decentralization. Make MegaETH faster, make MegaETH cheaper, make MegaETH more decentralized. We'll also be doing Ethereum-based KPIs too, to make sure Ethereum remains decentralized. All because we think these are the things that it takes to make MegaETH successful in 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now. So that's a pretty interesting segue to your other point, which is like, hey, Vitalik said that L2 suck. So what's the plan? I think I loved his tweet actually, for a couple of reasons.
What did it mean to you as someone building an L2, and how did you interpret it? Because there were some like carve outs there, right? So yeah, what did it mean to you?
I mean, so we've had conversations like this with Vitalik in the past, right? Like you don't build an L2 for the sake of building an L2, right? Like if there's the only, you should not be building an L2 if the only reason is because of some sort of regulatory cover, which you kind of think you have, which you probably don't, right? Like people are giving L2s lots of a hard time. The reason why you build an L2 is if you're going to build something that no L1 can do, right? So that was always the thesis for Mega. And we've been shouting this for multiple years now. I've been a massive proponent of ETH L1 scaling. I don't mind ETH L1 scaling at all because it's not competitive in any way, shape, or form with what Mega's doing. We did a stress test. In 1 week, we did 11 billion transactions, right? So and we did that while people like you guys, I don't know if you guys played, you guys can play those low latency games on the chain while we were doing up to 50,000 transactions per second. When something similar to that happened on Solana, what do I mean? Insane amount of activity, right? There was, is it Solana's case of Solana or the third-party infrastructure? But things started to break down and things got expensive. On Mega was 4 times cheaper than Base at 100 transactions per second when we were at 50,000 transactions per second. And this was done while all of us could play these low latency games with no issues. It's awesome. And this is something that, again, Ethereum L1 will never be able to do. So in Vitalik's tweet, he had 6 exceptions for when it makes sense to build an L2. The first one was, some custom privacy stuff, digital ID, really, it's not even EVM at that point, right? Like you've really gone super creative with what you're building. The second is an insane level of scale that will far outperform what the L1 could ever do. So Mega does that. The third one is ultra low latency properties, right? It's very difficult to achieve low latency when you have validators set across the world, right?
Sure.
Impossible, I would argue, but I know people have ideas on how to make it work. So don't want to get down that rabbit hole of any of your listeners. So that's 2 out of the 6. And then finally, he said enshrine stuff like oracles, which we've basically done with some of our work that will be coming out of Chainlink in the future. So what that basically means is, I think from V's point of view, L2s should exist if they're meaningfully expanding the pie, not replicating what exists on L1. And that's just been the fundamental thesis for Mega. Mega's not going to be successful if the only thing people do is come and just do Uniswap transactions or just use Aave. And by the way, we have Aave. Aave is a great product. But a lot of people are probably thinking, well, why isn't Aave getting a bunch of incentives right now? Because those incentives aren't downstream of something real. We're still working with some of these core Mafia applications to deploy, bring real activity onto the chain, which we can then hyper accelerate. So, and that point touches on your final point, which is why did you guys choose to basically, decouple TG and Mainnet? And instead of just saying like TG soon, create very clear public guidelines to community of when we think we'll be ready. And it all comes downstream of how the Mega token actually works. So the Mega token has 3 primary features. The first one is proximity markets. People will be bidding in Mega to co-locate with the MegaETH sequencer. You can think of this like MEV games, right? But democratized. It's not like the value is being captured just one stakeholder. It's going back to all stakeholders. So that's A. B is sequencer rotation. In the future, we'll be moving the sequencer around the world, right, to minimize end-to-end latency with major pockets of economic activity. What do I mean by that? It's probably 8 a.m. in the US right now, in the East Coast.
Yes.
I guess I think markets open an hour or something, or I think it's an hour. So what's going to happen is, that's where all the flow is going to be, right? So, the sequencer should probably be sitting there. And that's where, we have an optimal architecture and optimal end-to-end latency of users. And we can effectively just rotate the sequencer around the globe. That's the current plan. And we want to do a POA model, proof of authority model for that. And that's another role for Mega. But that requires there to be activity on the chain. And then finally, USDM rewards goes to buying back the Mega token, right? So all of these things are, we need to have some sort of a bootstrap event. We need to have like our ducks in a row. And to be frank, it was quite difficult to get every single application to deploy day one.
Sure.
I tried my best, guys, but I think a lot of these teams, they just have multiple levels of dependencies and sequential dependencies, which required sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say, let me ask on that then, because I think one thing I would definitely say, which I agree with you on, is this point about Aave. I saw a number of screenshots on the timeline about the Aave kind of TVL saying like, oh, this is disappointing. But as you explained, and I definitely agree with this part, although I want to dig into maybe some of the other live metrics, is that, as you say, Mega does not become successful, from my understanding of what you guys are trying to achieve, if the Aave TVL is high. Like the Ethereum, on Ethereum mainnet, the Aave TVL is high. That probably is reflective of why Ethereum is valuable, but that's not the game that you're playing. So you're obviously trying to design the incentives based on some other metrics. And I was looking at the details out today, which I'd probably want to just check in with you on. So out of the, you said it's difficult to quantify what you're going for, but you tried to set these KPIs. So at the moment, from what I can see, we've got maybe 5 out of 10 Mafia apps are now live. As you said, not all of them are live at the moment. You're 7% of your way to the $500 million USDM goal. And, when you say goal here, this is the TGE goal. Obviously, the game is much bigger than TGE, but that's the percentage at the moment. 62% of your USDM is deposited into key apps, which is above your 25% goal. And I believe Kumbaya is the app which made most in daily fees at 28K, but you are aiming for people to make 30 consecutive days worth above 50K. These are just the metrics to kind of trigger the potential TG. So I know things are probably moving very fast and things are very early, but how have you kind of absorbed and felt about these initial kind of data points?
Sure. So the important thing to note is that these numbers actually get updated once a day.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's a bit complicated, especially for the app fees. There was a bug with the way Kumbaya was calculating their numbers, or at least they were doing this daily reset thing, which kind of made our side a bit more complicated. The truth of the matter is, the chain's been live for a couple days, and there's a bunch of these contract listing things that are still going on. So there are applications that have been doing more in fees than what you can see, and they're just not being accounted for because we're still in the process of making sure all these applications submit their contracts with DeFi Llama, right? So there's just like a bunch of this sequencing that still has to be done. But yeah, I would say there's 3 KPIs. I think they all serve a different purpose. I would say that we have a pretty exciting few weeks when it comes to Mafia deployments. And those are some of the applications I'm most excited about. We'll be going live in the next 3 weeks. We're talking about the hit ones, the world markets, the Euphorias. And yeah, I mean, like, that means the number for the Mafia not KPI will increase. And I also believe it will create downstream effects for the USDM and app fee goals as well.
Very exciting. I want to ask 2 questions here. One more positive one, another more challenging one. On the exciting side, so you said you've got a number of Mafia apps coming. What have been some of the highlights for you so far working with those apps, and what are the ones that maybe you're particularly looking forward to, if any, and how quickly do you think that you'll be able to get those out of the gate coming up?
Yeah, so I think like both Hit One and Euphoria are both applications I'm really excited for. They are planning on being live for smaller groups in the following days, and aiming for more public launches in like the next 3-4 weeks. So across the board, I think we actually have a really exciting lineup of applications that people will be able to use. And there's a couple of sleeper horses I'm really excited about, stuff like Bricks. They bring the Turkish lira carry trade on chain. That's an exogenous yield factor, and like I think that'll be pretty exciting for crypto. In general, like I was listening earlier on, you guys were talking about the Korean equities market. People in crypto are kind of tired of yields or returns which are directly correlated to crypto. They want things which are uncorrelated from crypto using crypto rails. Very valid, very fair. I mean, we also believe this is a thing. So, you have options markets via Euphoria, you have FX trades via BRICS. So a lot of this is theses that we've also honed in on, and we've been working with these teams for many months on getting them to ready for market.
Can I ask one follow-up question there?
Sure.
Maybe people don't know this about you guys. I don't know how public you are about this necessarily, but you're a very international team. A lot of the stuff that we do, I mean, our show is obviously kind of Western centric because that's our nature, our upbringing. You're a very international team with some pretty interesting offerings, potentially as a consequence of that. How much is that kind of inbuilt into your ethos? How much has that been influential? I mean, I met some teams in the Mega Mafia doing some really interesting things in Turkey. You mentioned getting exposure to different markets. Like, is this like a fundamental part of what you guys are doing? Do you think crypto needs to go more international in that way rather than be more focused on the US?
Yeah, I mean, we're not Americans. It might sound like it, but it's not. Funny that Legendary had mentioned the Azerbaijani stock market on that segment. So I'm half Azerbaijani.
I was thinking, I knew that. I was like, I can't believe you just mentioned that just off the cuff. But what before you were coming on?
I am not. I wouldn't want to trade the Azerbaijani stock market either, if it helps.
Bring it to us, Namik. Bring it to us.
Yeah, I would say I think we just have a view of crypto that's not like a nice to have, or not like a, hey, we need this in case things go bad, right? Like most of the team is from emerging markets and thinks of crypto as the an inevitable end game, because no one wants to be governed by a sovereign, and all hegemonies eventually end. So the question is, do we have another hegemon like China emerge, and now the new US is China in 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Or will we as a collective society choose to kind of take control into our own hands? Now, obviously, there's another edge case where crypto helps entrench American hegemony, right? American dominance increases because of crypto. And that's an outcome. I don't feel strongly about it. But I do believe that most of the team is in crypto because we are fundamentally, this is just the life that we've lived, right? And we have a few members of the team that are American, but I'd say for 80% is not American. So yeah, we are quite international, I'd say. And I think that the future of not only crypto, but all markets is a lot more international as opposed to US centric. That might be a non-consensus bet, but I'm sure you guys talk about de-dollarization a ton on your pod. That's a topic. Gold's ripping. It's not ripping because people like the color or they decided it's nice to hold it. It's pretty heavy. They're doing it because they don't trust the dollar like they used to. I'm in London at the moment, and I was here a couple of years ago, and it was so awesome to have dollars because you were living like a boss, right? It's not the same anymore, guys. It's getting expensive. So yeah, I would say we are a relatively international crew.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought it's an interesting small detail that I wanted to bring out. Ledge, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, maybe I want to ask a follow-up question on that, because I find that interesting. I remember a specific time Brett was telling a side story, so this is why I'm asking. With an international team like that, what are some of the challenges, maybe from the culture perspective, maybe from belief systems that you have experienced building Mega, and how have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we definitely have challenges. I would say the largest one is distributed teams, right? So we have and there's a bit of benefit for being in London because you're in between Asia and the US in terms of time zones. But I do find myself just having to spam people an insane amount just to make sure that some high importance things aren't missed on Slack. And I don't think that's the fault of anyone. I think that's just there are pros and cons to distributed work. There are pros and cons to having a heterogeneous work culture and society and team. I would say that naturally means distributed. I love working from home. It's nice. But I would say like the main cons is just like, you're literally in different time zones, right? So someone will go to sleep before someone else. And then when someone goes to sleep, well, if they're a blocker, they're still a blocker. So I'd say that's the biggest issue with remote work. And in general, like I would say that if there's a weakness of the team, of having an international team, I'd say it's that. Culturally, though, I think it brings a lot more to the table than it takes away.
Makes sense. I've got two more questions that I have to ask before I think we close out, Namik. One is on, yeah, let's do it like this. So I think you guys have been very, very vocal about how it has to be about apps. Apps are the things that need to hit. You need to find apps that people want to use, that find product market fit. And so in that respect, you've obviously taken this unique approach where you created the Mafia group, created kind of an incubator, try to get people around the table together, have a bit of oversight, help people as much as you can. And some teams have come with you all the way, obviously, from maybe Mafia 1, and I know there's Mafia 2. Some notable teams like Noise and GTE have moved away for various reasons. What are the learnings you've taken away from this kind of in-house accelerator approach, and how is that going to inform your future thinking of attracting talent and retaining talent in a world where people know that the health of Mega is very much attached to creating and supporting strong apps?
Yeah, I think it's mostly a value swing, actually, right? I'd say sticking to your value set and making it clear from an earlier on point of view would be a crucial component, right? So I'd say we didn't have a chain live, which is a problem. It didn't exist. But yeah, I would say the bigger one is actually just making sure the people that you bring onto a program have the same value sets as you, and making sure that like they're trying to play the same games. Those are the main learnings that I made. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. Final question before we close out, unless there's anything else you want to share. From a business perspective, I'd really like to think in terms of what are the highest leverage things that I can do on a week or quarter basis in order to achieve like the global goal. I'm curious what you think now that you are in the situation that you're in, the chain is live, you've got some early kind of traction, although I'm sure you expect or hope there to be more as more of these apps come online. What is the highest leverage things that you guys are planning to be doing in the next weeks and months to, continue Mega's kind of uptake?
Yeah, everything is downstream of product, to be real with you guys. Like if the Mega blockchain as a product is garbage, Mega's in trouble. So the main thing on my end for the next, like, let's say 60 days is these apps. I wake up, I call apps. I go to sleep, I call apps, right? I dream about the apps, like just making sure I can get these applications deployed and that I can get people to look at the apps, care about the apps, right? Like I fully am aware of the fact that like Mainnet is this massive moment. So, people came and they're like, okay, where are the apps? And you're going to have churn and people will not come back, right? Some people will, some people won't. So my job for the next 30 to 60 days is to make sure when these apps go live, people try these apps. They see, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Why is it cool? Because I can do this. Like Mega does not matter in the way that like it's as itself, oh, look, 100K TPS, 10 millisecond block times. What matters is what can that enable and what can users enjoy. So yeah, I think my main focus is making sure that applications like Hit One, like Euphoria, like World Markets, all in the immediate term, Bricks, Rocket, Blitzo, Hello Trade, all of these applications are as successful as they can be, and they get as many eyeballs as possible. That is the primary focus that I have for the next 40 to 50 days, 60 days, something like that. Long term, I want to double down on FX and our general internationalness when it comes to asset issuance. So I want to have like unique assets on MegaETH that people want to trade. And I think that's not necessarily like, oh, look, I'm just going to go for like, equity perps I think a lot of smart people are doing equity perps. I think there's a really good opportunity with the carry trade, with FX markets, allowing people to run the Mexican peso carry trade, the Brazilian carry trade, the Turkish carry trade, the Japanese carry trade. There's a decent chunk of things that are possible there. I just think we have to find, and then obviously, like, the Azerbaijani stock market, because everybody wants to trade that. In general, I believe people want uncorrelated assets to crypto, especially during bear markets. That's why casinos were so popular last cycle. Remember Rollbit? It's the only thing I remember. So, and then hamster racing, that was fun as well. So these are things that people do in bear markets because they don't want to touch anything to do with crypto, because the RTP is just too low in a bear market, while the RTP becomes higher in a bull market. When RTP is low in a bear market, you have two options. You either, play like a proper casino game where, like, your bets, your odds. We have a couple cool things like that being built on Mega, or you find a place where you think that the RTP is higher. So that might be, Korean equities this week. It was gold 3 weeks ago. It might be FX markets in 4 weeks from now. But I think that's the focus for at least like the next couple of years. And I think that's like a more sustainable model, because ultimately crypto is about financial rails for assets. And then there's like the whole Web3 thesis, which I'm a big fan of. We have a lot of games on MegaETH, but I don't know if you guys are too interested based on what you guys usually talk about. I'm not going to start shilling you GameFi.
Well, Legendary, you mentioned Euphoria coming to market next week. We've got Euphoria on the show next week. Legendary is an advisor there, so I'm sure he'll be tapping away.
And I'm invested in Alphaforge as well, so I am quite interested in seeing how they will progress over the next weeks and months.
Yeah.
There we go. But to your point about this uniqueness thing, that's actually, sometimes as a capital allocator, even if it's not on the private side, when we're looking to put money into protocols, it gets very tiring when it's the same thing everywhere. So from even as an allocator looking somewhere to park dollars for a period of time, you're looking for net new things. New interesting things always seem to strike me to be the things that are valuable, particularly as we're going from one cycle to the next. You're trying to find what will be the new wave. We were just talking on the show before you were here about trying to find the new wave. Can it just be hyperliquid again? Maybe. But I think also, these things move in waves, and they often track chains. So it's hyperliquid's had a move, and I think it's continuing to do awesome. But equally, like, I think people are ready for a new wave as well. So, Namik, it's been awesome to have you with us. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out today?
Yeah, I guess I think there's like two kinds of yields in crypto. Like there's like real yield and fake yield. So fake yield is like, someone like mints a token and it's like, oh, like, here's my token. You're getting like 80% APY, right? But like the underlying isn't real. And there's like real yield. And that's like, things that are backed by some sort of AR, some sort of system behind it. And that's, I guess, like my ask to listeners here today is, if you're even remotely bored and just want to see what's new, we have a lot of founders trying just like weird things, right? Not weird in a bad way, weird in a good way, exciting way. And you might be agitated that like you show up day one and it's not all there. And I hear you and I feel you. And I am also agitated it's not all there. I wish it was all there. But I want you to know that we will get you guys some cool things to try. And it is ultimately the accumulation of a long time of work, right? It's not like we just came up with this idea of we need apps like 4 weeks ago, and you're going to get a bunch of half-assed applications. The reason why they're not live day one is because they take it very seriously. And they've all built unique and interesting things that make you question things from first principles on, how should a user behavior exist. So I'm excited. I'm definitely going to send it to the two of you guys. I'm going to spam Brett. I'm going to force him to use I wish Brett was here today, but yeah, I'll ask him to make sure you guys play some of these apps. And we're very open for feedback. So we're not the kind of team that's just like sitting in an ivory tower and doesn't care about what you have to say. I listen. We all do.
Love it. Namik, thanks so much for joining us, man. Let's leave it there for this time. We'll have you on again when you bring the Azerbaijani market on, and we'll have to talk about it.
Awesome, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Look, guys, that was a great conversation. We've got more great conversations coming next week. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, live on X video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts as well. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.